And that's all I think people want. Maybe rightly or wrongly. Richard's in Stepney. Morning, Richard.
Morning, Cristo. How are you?
Fine, thank you. So what would you like to say about this?
Well, I hope that we can get off to a better start this time than what we did in previous occasions, because I want a civil discussion with you. It got animated last time. And what I want to tell you, Cristo, is that people have got the right to be frustrated. But moderate Muslims and the likes of yourself, their apologists and liberal left, have to take it up with Muhammad. The problem lies in Islamic scripture itself. There are fundamental...
If you quote me any scripture, Richard, and you were told before you came on this call, if you start quoting me scripture, you will be cut off immediately because we're not doing that.
Who's quoted scripture?
Good. No, I'm just giving you a friendly and polite and lovely warning. That's all. But do go on.
Quite aggressive to me, Chris.
Do go on.
I'm not.
Kiss,
here
kiss,
to
kiss.
Scripture.
Lots of love. Go on, Richard.
Okay. Now, look, what it is, Cristo, the West's movement towards the truth is remarkably slow towards Islam, but we're slowly dragging ourselves towards it painfully, inch by inch, after each bloody Islamist assault. Now, throughout Europe and America, it remains government policy to say that any and all attacks carried out in the name of Muhammad's religion have nothing to do with Islam. Okay? It was even said by George Bush after 9/11. Now, it's time that these lies come to an end. We've got to openly address the actual problem itself. Now, we can say what we like about how frustrated yourself and moderate Muslims are, but it doesn't change what Islam says about itself. This is the problem. Hello, Cristo?
I'm still here. I'm letting you speak, Richard, and get your point across.
Right. Now, what it comes down to is the fact is the 109 verses that call for Muslims to wage violent warfare with non-believers for the sake of Islamic dominance. Now, ISIS, obviously, they don't speak for many Muslims. However, they do speak for many other Muslims. And they certainly speak for Islam, according to the most reliable Islamic sources. Not radical Islam, or fundamentalist Islam, or any other Islam. ISIS speaks for Islam, period.
Then may I ask a question then? If ISIS, and again, I do not want this to turn into is Islam violent or not conversation, because we've had it so many times before, but just one question on this, Richard. If ISIS speaks for the true representation of what Islam is, right?
They speak for an exact interpretation, not a true.
Okay, what you consider an exact. Would you say then?
Called an exact interpretation. That's what ISIS follows.
Then
ISIS is a Muslim group.
Why are 1.6 billion Muslims worldwide not all murderous infidels obsessed with the jihad, wanting to blow us and themselves up in the name of their religion?
Right. Okay. Well, the reason why that is because Muslims are human beings. And human beings, like I told you before, are far more likely to follow the laws that are written in the human heart. But the sporadic, the horrendous, staggering levels of violence that spreads throughout the Islamic world, which has wiped out over 1 billion people throughout history, is inspired by the people who follow the literal interpretation.
So you acknowledge that it is a human decision that those people make when it comes to... Because, Richard, I don't care, really, if Islam is the most violent religion in the world. I don't care if the Quran, and I don't know really enough about it, but let's take the worst case scenario. Let's say that the Quran actually lists that we want you to go and kill as many non-Muslims as possible and do it as quickly and as violently as you can. But just imagine it does. That's what I think the most rawest, most extreme view of the Quran is. What this is, Richard, is a human decision people are making to take that particular version, interpretation, truth, as you're putting it, of this particular book, and they are making that human decision to go and be violent in its name. So therefore, I don't know whether it is right to blame the book, the religion, or whether it is more appropriate to blame the human who made the decision to not be a decent human being.
Well, the thing is, Cristo, that violence in the Quran is given the weight of divine command. It's the literal word of Allah passed down by Muhammad himself. and Muhammad throughout Islamic scripture, I see it all comes down to the fact that you don't know what you're talking about. You're making assumptions on a culture that is completely different to yours, a school of thought that is completely different to yours. What you consider fairness and justice is what the Muslim world considers institutionalized discrimination against gays and homosexuals and women. These people think very differently from us. Now,
1.6 billion of them.
Well, see, this is where it gets complicated, Cristo, right? Because most Muslims will not go out and kill you because most people will follow the laws that are written in the human heart.
So they're bad Muslims. 1.6 billion Muslims would be good Muslims if they killed us.
This is where it gets more complicated. Muhammad, there's no simple answer to all these questions. It's very complicated. Now, Muhammad is to be strictly considered throughout Islam as the perfect example of human conduct. Now, the vast majority of Muslims, this 1.6 billion you're talking about, are far more concerned about throwing tantrums and demanding rights for special rights and privileges that they explicitly deny others than they are for the hundreds of thousands of people who are horribly murdered in the name of their religion every year. Right? They have a religious duty to stick by their religious counterparts. There is a state of ambivalence that prevents moderate, peaceful Muslims from standing up against jihadists. The terrorists like ISIS are operating from a broad Islamic tradition, Cristo, okay? I am probably the most foremost expert in this country you're going to get, which is why my voice is so important on this subject.
Sorry, that's your own declaration of that. I've heard you declare that many times, Richard, but I don't know who else other than yourself.
Why don't you get an Islamic scholar on this radio station to challenge me?
Because
and we can have a civilized debate. Organise it.
Of having this debate actually depresses me beyond belief, because I personally, Richard, thinks that your view and views like yours are so unbelievably damaging, and actually I think that really what they display on your behalf is someone who is completely, blindly falling for exactly what ISIS want. Don't you get that this is exactly what the narrative that they want? Don't you get that? Don't you get that it's a human decision as to whether you go and kill someone? No, sorry, Richard, stop saying, oh dear, because you yourself acknowledge that 1 billion Muslims worldwide, 1.6 billion Muslims worldwide, all read this terribly violent book that you talk of, yet they choose as a human decision to not go out and kill people. So how is it possible that then you say it's not a human decision, it's not these people who are going out? It's beyond belief, Richard, really, to me.
Well, the thing is, it is beyond belief, isn't it, Cristo? But it's also beyond belief how what you call these people with psychological dysfunctional problems can come together in their thousands, their hundreds of thousands, and miraculously form terrorist networks all across the world that are dedicated to committing mass murder and mutilation to advance the cause of their faith. What gives you the qualification to call these people mental or crazy or nutters like what you so passionately keep stating?
Because because
there is no evidence that these people are suffering from any psychological trauma.
You don't believe that waking up in the morning, deciding to load up a Kalashnikov with ammunition and then going out and firing 100 rounds into a restaurant of people eating dinner, you don't think that really counts as any kind of insanity?
Cristo, what I'm going to tell you is something very uncomfortable now, but it's the truth. Everything I've told you is the truth, right? And your listeners who actually desire the truth know I'm telling it. Now, what these people do when they go out and kill people, they're using courage, right? Courage can be used to do very, very bad things. Courage is not always a virtue. It takes courage to go and get a gun and shoot someone. It's an act of violence. It is not cowardly. We keep saying these cowardly terrorists, but they are anything but cowardice. This ideology that inspired 9/11, that can inspire a woman to celebrate the death of her own child, right? This is how far the termites are spread. This is how far this ideology goes. Islam is, but it's like a virus. That's what it does, right? And when you read the Quran and you understand the teachings of Muhammad and you understand what this religion inspires, we've got 1,400 years of evidence to prove, right, that the terrorists are following the perfect example of the Prophet Muhammad.
All right, Richard, that is your opinion on things. Thank you very much indeed for that. That's Richard in Stepney. So, if Richard... I'm not going into whether Islam is violent or not. I'm really not going down that route. And by the way, Richard declares himself as the expert on Islam and declares himself as the foremost United Kingdom scholar on the subject. That is his own declaration, by the way. I don't know who else has declared him. 0345 6060973 is the number to call here on LBC News.
Cristo on LBC.
Good morning, it is Cristo here on LBC. I regret putting Richard on now. I really do. And my instinct was to not let him on because he always declares that he is the Muslim scholar of the United Kingdom, when he isn't. He declares he knows more about the Islamic faith than Muslim people who call me. But what I find contradictory about his argument... And by the way, the reason I don't want Muslim and Quran quotes on the show, I'll tell you why. Firstly, I think it's really boring radio. I'm sorry, but Richard will wheel off a Quran quote that endorses violence, then someone else will ring up and give a quote that doesn't, and then someone else will ring up because it's all quoted in different languages and has been interpreted in different languages, and then it just becomes this festival of people ringing up with different quotes from a book that a lot of people haven't read, and a lot of people, myself included, have so little interest in ever reading. And I have my contempt for the Quran, the Bible, every single religious text I have utter contempt for, because I think it is an absolute load of bunkum, firstly. And so that is my starting position on any religious text. Now, what I found contradictory about Richard's position was that there are 1.6 billion Muslims worldwide, and his assertion, and perhaps I misunderstood him, but I don't think I did, his assertion is that those Muslims are not following the true path of the Islamic faith, because what they are doing is using sort of human morality. They are following the laws of the land, and they're making human decisions not to follow that violent text. Now, let's assume that Richard is correct and that the Quran is a hugely violent text, as is the Bible, as is all of them, because there are violent parts of the Bible. There are violent computer games, there are violent lots of things. There are lots of things you can indoctrinate yourself into that are violent. But he acknowledges that the vast majority of Muslims make the human decision not to be violent. So therefore, surely he has to acknowledge that those people who have been indoctrinated are also making a human decision to be violent. So therefore it is the human that is at fault, not the text. I don't care if the Quran is violent. I don't care if the Bible is violent, because it's people that carry out these attacks, not books that they read. That's why I don't want to get into, is the Quran violent? Because actually I think it's irrelevant, frankly. I think this is about indoctrination. I think that this is about people who choose to believe that there is a holy war taking place. And I think that actually... Well, I'll read you a text. The same view of Islam that Richard has is the exact extreme view of groups like ISIS. Nothing to do with Islam, just people like Richard's view, because he is so extreme.